Hola a todos. What's up, guys? Welcome to the Latino Fluency Podcast. My name is Levi Flint. In today's episode, we are going to talk about Mexico and the U.S. deciding to extend their COVID-19 border restrictions for yet another month. Very interesting, very bizarre at the same time. This is a crazy year. So before we get started with today's episode, we are going to talk about two quick things, two very important, relevant things. The first of those being Latino fluency as a whole. So I have really been giving it some thought and some time. I haven't put out an episode for quite a while. I haven't done too many videos either for a while. And the reason for that is because I've really just been taking time to overthink that too, but to rethink what it is that I'm trying to accomplish with Latino fluency. And I've come to the conclusion that I would really like Latino fluency to be, let's say 60% mostly focused on Spanish, 40, maybe 50% focused on Latino or Latin America as a whole. So current events in Latin America, culture in Latin America, and everything that goes into culture, music, pop culture, et cetera, film. Also, maybe a little bit of history, talking about certain historical events in Latin America that really have played a big part in shaping the way that the region is today. It's a massive region, so there's a lot of topics, so many topics we can go into. And so maybe there's going to be a little bit more content in English, or in this case, like today's episode, in English and in Spanish. And I think this is kind of cool because if you're listening to this podcast, you probably speak English maybe as your native language or at least as a second language. So I think that could be really cool and to change things up a little bit. The second thing is my courses. So I have a fundamentals course if you are a complete Spanish beginner. I have that course. You can access that. And I also have the Spanish immersion course, which goes along with the podcast. So if you are interested in that particular course, I'm going to continue building that out. That's something that I'm always working on, and I'm adding episode transcripts, so word-for-word transcripts, slow versions of the podcast, normal versions of the podcast, vocabulary quizzes and exercises, and also different phrase breakdowns that you hear in different episodes. Okay, so all that is going to be very useful. On top of that, you get access to a Facebook members only group access. You get access to that. And in there, you can ask questions as they relate to any of the content that you're seeing in my courses, or just any Spanish question that you stumble upon in general. So if you're doing Duolingo, you don't understand a certain grammatical thing, beginning very soon, I'm going to begin doing Wednesday lives. So I'll be talking about a certain subject or just giving a class, and you can ask questions, participate, whatever. The idea is to, have this content that is like pushing your Spanish forward, and not only your Spanish, but a real understanding of Latin America. And there's so much to learn. There's so much to cover. And I'm rambling. So let's dive into today's episode. Today's episode is a little bit different than ones in the past. I'm going to talk about a current event that is going on in Latin America, this one in Mexico, and we're going to talk about it in English. And then right after that, I'm going to dive into Spanish, and we're going to look a little bit more in depth at this particular article that I'm covering. And we're going to read a lot of that in Spanish, and we're going to talk about some things. So if you just want the Spanish, move ahead a little bit. I don't know where that's going to be, but a couple minutes down, you can skip ahead. But if you want to get an idea of what we're talking about here in English as it relates to this topic, Mexico, the U.S., extending the COVID restrictions, listen to it in English, and then the Spanish rendition will probably make a lot more sense to you, and you'll be able to pick up the meaning a lot better. You already know what we're talking about, so that's the idea. Let's dive into the news. Mexico, the U.S., and Canada to extend COVID-19 border restrictions for another month. The border restrictions over COVID-19 concerns were first implemented on March 21st. Yeah, so this has been going on for a while. So if you're watching this, if you don't live on the border, I live in Texas. I've done a bit of back and forth Mexico, U.S. travel in the past. And yeah, this is a big deal. It's affecting both sides. So there's a lot of Americans that like to go down to Mexico. I'm in a lot of these Mexico expat groups, so there's a lot of people that travel from Mexico or from the United States down to Mexico in their cars, RVs, trailers, whatever, and vice versa. So they come back. This isn't so easy anymore. In fact, it looks like it's impossible unless it's like commercial related. So you can still fly, as far as I understand. You can grab flights. I'm not sure. This is why I was thinking this is a very, to me, it's very bizarre. Why can you still fly back and forth, but you can't drive your car? I don't know. I guess there's COVID particles all over your your car or something. I don't know. To me, it's a little odd. So the U.S., Canada, and Mexico are poised to extend their agreements to keep their shared borders closed to non-essential travel to August 21st, officials said Tuesday. The agreements would extend the closures by another 30 days. A person familiar with the matter said final confirmation of the U.S.-Canada agreement has not yet occurred, but is likely. It's going to happen. The official was not authorized to speak publicly ahead of an announcement this week and spoke on the condition of anonymity. Let's skip that. It's anonymous, right? Right? Anonymous. It's anonymous. The restrictions were announced on March 18th and were extended in April, May, and June. So every month they are just drawing it out another month, another 30 days, another 30 days, another 30 days. Mexico's Foreign Affairs Ministry, SRE, said via Twitter Tuesday that after reviewing the development of the spread of COVID-19, Mexico had proposed to the U.S. government that they extend the restrictions on ground travel, just ground travel, at the U.S.-Mexico border for 30 more days. So I think what's going on here with the ground travel is that Mexico still is concerned about getting their tourist dollars, which makes up either number 2 or number 3 of their biggest imports, right? So we'll go over that in a different episode. But I want to say it's number 2, number 3 of, it's just an insane amount of money that they pull in from tourism every single year. So they got to keep those flights going. That's my understanding. So that's pretty much the idea, right? That we're getting another extension, and we're going to dive into the Spanish version of this right now. I just want to say one quick thing. If you guys have watched this episode before, or watched this podcast before, you've seen Reni, right? And Reni is right now, she had to go back to Mexico because of her visa, and she's unable to come back via car, which she usually always does. So kind of a sticky situation right now. Pretty strange. So let's dive in to the Spanish version. Y vamos a hablar en español, empezando ahora. Listo. Y ahora en español, básicamente vamos a hablar sobre la misma cosa, pero esta vez vas a escuchar palabras diferentes que tal vez no sepas, que no hayas aprendido hasta ahorita. Y pues voy a leer el artículo con más profundidad, ¿no? Que de lo que me gusta hacer en inglés. Porque lo que quiero hacer en inglés es básicamente revisar el artículo muy rápidamente. Y después en español vamos a platicar con más detalle, ¿no? Bueno, aquí, por COVID-19, México y Estados Unidos acuerdan cierre parcial de la frontera hasta el 21 de agosto. Debido a la propagación del COVID-19, México fue quien planteó a Estados Unidos la extensión. Las autoridades de México y Estados Unidos determinaron mantener el cierre parcial de la frontera por 30 días más, hasta el 21 de agosto próximo. La Secretaría de Relaciones Exteriores, SRE, informó a través de redes sociales que tras haberse revisado el desarrollo de la propagación del COVID-19, México fue quien planteó a Estados Unidos la extensión por 30 días más. México fue quien planteó. Muy interesante. Entonces, parece que México tiene miedo de Estados Unidos. Entonces, las cosas han cambiado un poco, ¿no? Antes fue que Estados Unidos, nosotros teníamos miedo de los mexicanos y de las cosas malas que venían del sur. Y ahora un poquito al revés, ¿no? Porque somos nosotros quienes estamos teniendo problemas. Interesante. Vamos a ver qué pasa. Propagación del COVID-19. México fue quien planteó a Estados Unidos la extensión por 30 días más de las restricciones al tránsito terrestre no esencial en la frontera común. Okay. Las restricciones, indicó la dependencia, se mantendrán en los mismos términos en que se han desarrollado desde la primera implementación el 21 de marzo pasado. Entonces, cada mes están dando una extensión extra, ¿no? Desde el finales de marzo decidieron dar 30 días más. O sea, cada mes, 30 días más. Vamos a ver hasta dónde para este pedo. Yo no sé qué pensar. Ambos países continuarán buscando coordinar las medidas sanitarias en la región fronteriza. Las medidas estarán vigentes hasta el 21 de agosto de 2020, detalló la dependencia. Muy interesante. Tenemos un tweet aquí de Relaciones Exteriores que dice: tras revisar el desarrollo de la propagación del COVID-19, planteó a la extensión por 30 días más de las restricciones al tránsito terrestre no esencial en su frontera común. Las restricciones se mantendrán en los mismos términos en que se han desarrollado desde su implementación el 21 de marzo. Ambos países continuarán buscando coordinar las medidas sanitarias en la región fronteriza. Las medidas estarán vigentes hasta el 21 de agosto 2020. Bueno, eso dicen las de Relaciones Exteriores. Entonces, pues este tema es un tema muy interesante. Bueno, tenemos aquí muchos comentarios muy interesantes aquí en El Universal, por si quieren leer. Muy interesante. Entonces, básicamente, vamos a regresar a los comentarios. Pero, en mi opinión, todo este pedo, toda esta cosa con COVID-19 es muy interesante porque todos tienen una opinión contraria. Y va cambiando cada mes. O sea, me parece que todo acerca de este virus, todo acerca de si es una cosa política o si no es política, es muy, muy interesante. Yo no sé qué pensar, la verdad. A principio, yo tenía más miedo. Después pasé por una fase donde pensé que pues a lo mejor, pues sí es algo bastante política, ¿no? Porque, sobre todo aquí en Estados Unidos, porque es el año de las elecciones. Entonces, si se chinga la economía, pues obviamente va a dañar a Trump. Pero al mismo tiempo, en otros países están teniendo otros problemas también. O sea, están teniendo problemas muy graves. Entonces yo no sé qué pensar. Y ahora estoy ¿qué me importa? O sea, no hay nada que yo pueda hacer. Yo estoy trabajando aquí mucho en casa. Estoy pasando demasiado tiempo en casa. Estoy haciendo ejercicio en casa. Cuando salgo, básicamente estoy yendo a un parque cerca de aquí. Voy al lago, aquí en Austin, en Texas. Voy a casa de mis papás, viven en el campo. Me gusta ir hasta allá, para poder salir un poquito, tomar el aire libre, tomar sol. Y pues, ¿qué más se puede hacer? Entonces, vamos a ver qué va a pasar en futuros episodios. Voy a parar aquí. Muchas gracias por haber escuchado este podcast, este episodio. Thank you guys so much for listening to this episode. I hope you liked this episode. It was definitely an experimental one. Hopefully it didn't go on too long. I'm hoping the time was just right. And yeah, so we'll dive into more topics, more current events, interesting things as we move forward with the podcast. Make sure to check out my courses. If you're a complete beginner, check out the Fundamentals program, Spanish Fundamentals program. if you are a podcast listener, you want to take it to the next level, transcripts, vocabulary training, all that good stuff, make sure to check out the Spanish Immersion Program. That is going to be exactly what you want, exactly what you need. And if you have any suggestions or any way to improve, just let me know, guys. Pues muchas gracias. Oh, and if you're checking it out on YouTube, I try to include some of the notes that you will see in the course. A little sneak peek will be in the what is it called? In the description section. So check that out. Anyways, hasta el próximo episodio. I will see you guys very soon. Adios.